what do all these rooms have in common? They all have this quality to them, this magazine-worthy look. We can clearly see they were crafted by designers. But why do they look so good? In other words, what exactly do designers do different than the average person when designing a space? That's what we're going to explore today. I'll walk you through 5 design concepts that make good interiors become great. And I'll make sure to include plenty of examples so we really grasp how theory works in practice. Alright, let's get into it. When it comes to designing spaces, one of the most important shifts for me was to learn to visualize specific parts of a room as vignettes. They're like little corners of interest. Of course, the whole room needs to look good to feel cohesive. But when you divide it into separate areas and make each one matter, things change. Take this bedroom, for example. In a bedroom, we have a clear focal point, which is the bed. So the wall behind it is the prime location to hang art or do a custom wall. For some, this would be enough, but not for this designer. Here we have other corners of interest. So besides having a beautiful dresser, she styled it with interesting pieces and it became another area of interest. Same for this corner with the chair. The composition of the chair plus the 2 pictures on the wall create a beautiful vignette. Now let's look at this integrated space of kitchen, living, and dining. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a picture that showed like the whole space, but we can get an idea of how they are all integrated. Take this corner next to the dining table here. By adding a few decorative pieces, it became a much more interesting corner. Same for this built-in cabinet that beautifully integrates the kitchen and the living room. They could have just hung the large art piece, but by adding these super interesting wall sconces and all the decorative objects, this is now a vignette. And this works for absolutely every room of the house. Bedrooms, living rooms, dining rooms, kitchens, and even bathrooms. I personally never looked at a blank wall the same after I learned this trick. To me, it actually makes the whole process of decorating the room a bit easier, since I don't have to necessarily think about it all at once. It's like breaking the styling process into smaller, more manageable parts. So have an accent chair, throw in a side table and a lamp, maybe a picture above it. Single picture on the wall, place something below it, like a chair or a plant. Style a console table intentionally, layer art, lamps, vases. Eventually, most spaces that would otherwise be pretty unremarkable become this little corner of interest. And that makes all the difference in great interiors. So now that I mentioned breaking the design process into smaller parts, I wanted to highlight the importance of cohesion. Because yes, we can create different vignettes throughout the space, but if each one has a different style, different materials, and no common thread, the whole room would look messy and we'd completely miss the mark. So let's talk about style real quick. While it's completely fine to use different styles as a reference and even mix a few pieces of different styles in a single room, it is helpful to have a defined one as a guide. Say you like the Scandinavian aesthetic. So when you're thinking about each section of the room, the minimalist lines and decor should be present in all of them, like following a general guideline. If you're not sure about which style you prefer, I would suggest going to Pinterest and saving all of the rooms that kind of speak to you, the ones that you like the most. Then look back at what you saved and try to identify the common thread between them. You don't even have to name your preferred style. I don't. But it is important to understand what you like, to try to identify what all these rooms have in common. So what you use as a reference makes sense, like they don't have a huge variation. Otherwise, the end result when you're designing a space might lack cohesion. For example, look at my Pinterest inspiration board. You can clearly see similarities between pictures. Most of them feature a few mid-century modern pieces, a mix of colorful objects, but a more neutral base. Some striped and checkered patterns here and there, but I feel they all belong to the same family in terms of style. Okay, so besides style, to me there are two easier ways to achieve cohesion throughout a space: through color and or material. Take this home here as an example. In the kitchen, we have stainless steel cabinets and a single wall shelf of the same material. But notice that the chairs also have a detail of the same material. That connects the two and creates cohesion. Same goes for color. The stone of the countertops is a rich green, which speaks to the green from the chairs. Now, when we look at other areas of this house, the same thing happens. In the living room, a green couch and a shelving unit with chrome finishes. Home office, bathroom. Now, you don't have to use the exact same color palette or same materials all throughout the house. This effect is much more noticeable in integrated spaces. And even in those, the correlation doesn't have to be so noticeable. But the way that I like to think about it is, it really helps to repeat a color or a material at least twice in the space. You can do that with accessories, hardware, paint, tones of wood. This subtle repetition will make the whole room look more cohesive. So for instance, I'm in the process of decorating my integrated main living area of my house. We have a kitchen in the middle, the dining area on one side, and the living area on another. So it is a long space, but they're all connected. So I started with the dining area. And the space is currently feeling very modern. We have a lot of eclectic pieces there and a few chrome accents. So when I'm thinking about pieces to purchase for my living room, I know that I want to include a few chrome pieces to that space as well. Maybe through a new floor lamp, so both spaces feel connected by this material. And the same goes for style. I think my living room is currently leaning into a more natural feel. I just changed my couch to a green one, and I have these beautiful rattan chairs and the wood accent wall, and so it's all very earthy. And I know I have to include a few different and quirky pieces to the living room, so it kind of connects to the fun environment of the dining area as well. Okay, moving on to the next on my list. So I'll be very careful to talk about what timeless means, because I think all of us are prone to thinking or choosing something that's timeless, but it is actually just popular at the moment. So while I do believe that all interiors will have at least some influence of its time, I also think that we can choose pieces that will most likely age well and don't look dated after a while. And we can do that for most of the space and then throw in a few accents here and there that we consider more trendy. And that's the case for most expensive looking interiors. So the first thing that I think makes a design look timeless is the use of natural materials. Wood, cotton, linen, natural stone. If used harmoniously, those are never out of style, and they look even better with time. Besides, they bring a rich, tactile feel to the room, which makes it cozier and more visually interesting when compared to rooms full of plastic or MDF furniture. Now, I'm not saying those things are cheap or you'll be able to achieve this look in a budget necessarily. I mean, it's hard to fill a space with only high quality furniture and accessories all at once. But adding even a few pieces here and there will make a difference. Besides, you can gradually replace pieces and create an interesting interior over time. The secondhand market is my go-to option for this. And when we're talking about timeless design, pattern is another thing that we have to keep in mind. Those designer-looking interiors, when they do use pattern, it usually comes from a custom-made piece, a classic style, or something more exclusive. Certainly not patterns that you see in every big box store. I'm personally not a pattern person, but if you are, try looking for different fabrics in your local fabric store and maybe consider some custom-made cushion covers, or look into vintage pieces. I guess the same goes for things that we consider trendy. You know, those styles that we see over and over on Instagram, Pinterest, they seem to be everywhere. As I mentioned before, I think it's absolutely okay to add a few trendy things here and there, but I would save them for things that can be easily changed, like paint, decor objects, or small pieces of furniture. I would think twice before choosing to cover my entire kitchen in marble or installing those wood LED panels all over my walls, for example. These things might be everywhere right now, but what if they go out of style next year? So as a general guide, I would stick to pieces and colors that have stood the test of time and are still popular today to create a more neutral and timeless base for the space. And then add a few trendy accents here and there for contrast. And speaking about accent pieces, here's another design trick. Make them, or at least some of them, unique. Here's how. First, choose a normal piece, but with an expected material, like this dining table with this large steel base. In terms of shape and function, it's just a dining table, but the material is super interesting. Or this table lamp that looks to be made entirely of paper. Again, pretty normal shape, but unique use of material. Another way of doing this is choosing elements with unique shapes, like this chair, or this one, or this lamp, or this one, or this tool, or this one. Pieces that go beyond just their function, but also act like as a sculptural, as a piece of art. You can also look for pieces that look kinda weird. Some might say even ugly, but when styled correctly, they can bring so much interest to a space. Like this sculpture, or this odd lamp, or this funny piece of art. Thrift stores or antique shops are the best places to look for those. You can really find some true gems for a reasonable price. Those weird pieces are usually one of a kind, so they have this artsy vibe to them, and that exclusivity makes the space feel more curated. Finally, don't be afraid to mix pieces that don't seem like they match together. Pieces of different shapes, textures, colors can look great together, like you're creating your own personal art collection. So your interior would be anything but generic. Alright, final item on my list is contrast. I like to define contrast as the addition of something unexpected. So let's go straight to some examples and I'll show you my favorite ways to add contrast to a space. The first way is through scale. Take this dining room. It's quite compact, with a small round table for 4, but instead of hanging a small picture on the wall, they chose this huge one that goes almost all the way to the floor. And this picture shows the opposite, a more spacious dining area, but the picture on the wall looks undersized. This contrast of scale is usually popular with art, like the ones that you just saw, but they are also usually used in lighting, like having a huge pendant above a relatively small table, or a tiny one for that matter. Another way I like to add contrast is through style. Take this bedroom. It has modern elements, modern colors and shapes, but the art they chose to hang above the bed has a classic frame and a vintage look. So having one or a few pieces of a different style in the space brings a nice touch of uniqueness. Same goes for this room here. Most of the elements here are not ultra modern, but they are not classic either, very timeless. Except for this vintage desk. It stands out because of its different style, and since it's the only element here that really leans into this antique look, the room feels fresh and also full of personality. I love the mix of old and new. I think it's a great way to make a space feel more timeless and more intentional. It's a great balance. So what did you think about these tips? Did they make sense to you? I would love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment. Also, do let me know if you liked the way I structured this video. If you guys like it, I could make more like this one. Oh, and don't forget to leave a like, and also consider subscribing to the channel to see more content like this. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time!